Hey guys, what's up? So I want to go over the different phases of your runway. So this is something that I just went over with one of my athletes last week to really kind of explain all the different importances of a runway, and explaining all these phases allowed him to be more in control of his runway, the rhythm of his runway, and being able to visually steer and allow himself to have a very consistent runway. So for those that don't know me, my name's Fallon Headings. I'm a physical therapist and a track and field coach. So let's go over runways. So like I said in previous videos, you can have anywhere from a 6-step approach to an 8 to a 9. I normally don't go over 9 steps because I coach at the Division 3 level, so I don't really see any more elite athletes that should need more than a 9-step approach. Do I see a lot of kids that need a 6-step approach to learn their runway for triple? Absolutely. So these are probably the most 3 common approaches that I do. Either a 6-step approach if they're still learning the triple jump, an 8-step is a very common one, and then a 9-step approach for anybody that needs a little bit more time to get up to speed or just a little bit more time to feel comfortable at the board. So again, your end goal of your runway is to be at your top speed that you can control, or your optimal speed that you can control going off the board. So, but you want to be your fastest in the last 2 steps, 2 to 3 steps of your approach. So that last 2 to 3 steps of your approach, I call your prep phase. In the long jump, this is where you're putting in your penultimate step. In the triple jump, this is where you're just getting that rhythm, getting that speed, and really honing in on being able to run off that board and have great momentum off the board. So just like the 100-meter and the 60-meter dash, every sprinter needs a drive phase. So every single runway should start technically with a drive phase. Whether your drive phase is 2 steps long, because your 6-step approach, you don't really have much time to be down and being able to transition up to being able to fully be ready to jump off your 6th step. So your drive phase is only going to be 2 steps in the 6-step approach. In my 8 and 9-step approaches, my drive phase becomes 3 steps. So I always say power out your first 3 lefts or your first 3 rights. And that allows them to be very consistent in the beginning of their run. I think I read in an article that over 90% of runway errors happen in that first 3 steps of your approach, because that's when you are able to have the most mistakes, because you're starting from 0 miles per hour and you're transitioning up. So your steps, you can either go wide, you can take a short step to try and be more powerful. Those first 3 steps need to be the most consistent of your approach. And this is a good point. If you're a very inconsistent person in your drive phase, maybe you put a check mark at step 3 or step 2. So you can make sure that you're on. Or even if you just do that during your practices, you don't even need a check mark during runway, during the meet. If you are always practicing that consistency and that drive phase out the same, it should become muscle memory over time. So making sure those first 2 to 3 steps is consistent and you're getting power. Your drive phase needs to be consistent. So that's the first step or the first phase of your runway. Then as you, just like a 100-meter dash, you're starting to transition up. You're starting to get tall. So between steps 3 and 4 in your 6th step, 4 through 6 and 4 through 6 in your 8 and 9 steps, that's your transition. Now as you're driving out, so you're down in this 45-degree angle driving out, starting at step 3 to step 4, you're starting to transition up and get nice and tall. This is where your heel recovery is nice and high. You're starting to drive your knees, get those feet underneath of you, and bringing yourself up to either your top speed for the long jump or your optimal speed for the triple jump, and getting ready for your prep phase in the end. So those are your 3 phases of your runway. So you want to make sure you're practicing your drive phase, then your transition, and then your prep. And some of the ways that I practice this is I'll break the runway down, and one day we'll just practice the drive phase because of how many errors can happen in that drive phase. That's all we practice. Make sure they're consistent on those first 3 steps. Make sure those consistent on the first 3 steps. Because the other thing I want to bring up with your runway is you see on Instagram millions and millions of different ways to start. The most consistent way to start and make sure that you will not have any errors is just a crouch start. Then the next most consistent is one of those rock backs where you kind of rock back and then go. And then your last one is either a walk-in runway because you can maybe miss the tape mark that you have down, or the other option, I've seen people try and hop into it. That's very inconsistent because you have no idea where your hop's going to be, how you're going to power out then. So whatever you do and whatever you decide to be your start, whatever's most comfortable with you. Remember, I don't have a problem with doing a walk-in start. A lot of my athletes do a walk-in start because that's the most comfortable for them, but they just have to be consistent. So make sure you are comfortable but consistent. And those are the really big keys for the beginning of your approach, and then get up to that top speed and hit a good jump. Remember, momentum off the board. If you have any other questions, let me know. Subscribe to my page, like, comment, whatever you want to do. Thanks.